ex-wife's first relationship is with person I thought she was cheating with during marriage. My 45M and my ex 45F were together for 20 years and married for 14. About 1/2 years ago, my ex walked in one day and said we needed to get separated or maybe divorce. It was a shock to me. My ex traveled down to San Diego a lot for work, like every other week for a few days at a time. And so I immediately assumed she met someone. We agreed to separate and start marriage counseling. I showed up and put the effort in. She did not. Um, the therapist kept asking why she wasn't doing more than being present, and she would say she doesn't know. Because she couldn't afford to actually live on her own, we basically cohabitated during this time. Sh During this time, her trips to SD for work got more frequent. The work basis for the trips was legit. One of the people in her work group who was present on her projects and essentially part of her team was a man we will call Owen. Owen worked for a company she was a subcontract for. All the people on this team have a more fraternal relationship than work. One, they all seem to be involved in each other's lives, go drinking together, yada, yada, yada. And of all the men in the team she spent with the most time with or told stories about the most, talked on the phone the most with, it would be Owen. Owen was also the only single guy in the group. She would always just say much work they had going on or how much she was busy directing this or that. And that is why they were in the phone all the time. And for the most part, when I would hear the conversations, it was work. It wasn't only work, but it wasn't only secret flirting conversations either. About a year into our separation, we decided to try and take a family trip to SD. The trip was fine, but not what I was hoping for in rebuilding the relationship. She continued to be emotionally and physically distant. I flew back on Friday. She and our son stayed down for another day to go a car show she was really interested in. Come to find out, Owen was at that car show and had breakfast with them. I found out because my son said that mom's work friend was there when we were talking about the show later that day. When she got home, I directly asked her if she was having an affair with Owen. Our separation was done to repair our marriage, and we both agreed to not date others during that time. When confronted, she vehemently denied having an affair with Owen. Not her type, they are friends, they work together, etc. All I could do was take her at face value and decide to trust her or not, and I did. Fast forward to this past April, we decide on divorce. Primarily, my ex decides on it, whereas I wanted to stay married. She said she didn't want to be an everyday relationship person anymore, needed years to heal herself, and just didn't want to be with anyone. She wasn't even sure if she would take up someone ever again. With all that, I couldn't see how a marriage would ever function. So I agreed on divorce. And that was that. We decided on being as amicable and friendly and supportive of each other as we could be for the sake of our child and because our marriage didn't end in hate or because an affair, it just died. I didn't hate her. We decided on a divorce plan and split of assets without lawyers based on our desire to remain friends and be amicable. I was to keep the house. I told her she could live here until she was able to secure a home of her own in a place she wanted. We took trips still as a three-person family, staying in different hotel rooms, but taking our son to concerts. One trip was down to SD about 6 weeks ago. Owen's name resurfaced because she was supposed to have a work dinner one of the nights, but it didn't happen because she said everyone backed out of going except for Owen and her. And she thought they were setting up her and Owen on a date. Uh, she said she had no interest in that and yada, yada, yada. I asked why the people she worked with would try and set up her and Owen on a date if they never showed interests in one another. And she said because they were both single. She reiterated that she wasn't even in a place to start dating yet, that she needed to heal herself and be alone. This past week, she was once again gone for work in SD. She left her iPad out at home. On the day she was traveling back, I thought it would be nice to plug it in for her, so she had it charged when she got back. When I grabbed it to plug in, on the home screen was a text from Owen that was simply, I knew immediately that wasn't just some friend or coworker bullshit. She got home that night. I asked her about the texts. She said yes. Her and Owen had gone on a date this week to test and see if a relationship was viable. I asked her if she had lied to me before about cheating with him while we were married, and she said no. I asked her how just 6 weeks ago, she said all the stuff about having zero interest in him and not wanting to date anyone, and she said she just kind of changed her mind about a couple weeks ago. Um, I asked what happens if the people she works with find out, and she said she didn't plan on telling them. She said she'd play on telling me if this date had gone well. If it hadn't, she didn't see the need for me to know. She said since it did go well, she was going to tell me, and she knew the first thing I'd ask her is if she had been affair with Owen, but she figured I'd get over it and it wouldn't be a big deal. And is furious. I called bullshit on the eyes she wasn't cheating. I explained to her she was being purposefully naive if she thought cheating was only physical and not emotional as well. I told her there is no believable way some just wakes up one day and decides to start dating the one person their ex asked them if they were having an affair with. I said, even if that was true, out of all the people in the world you could date, you choosing to date the one person who you knew my first question would be, did you have an affair with him this whole time? Is so fucking wild. Now I told her, and I know she doesn't owe me anything. We have agreed on divorce. We got paperwork all done and being filed, but we agreed on the terms and the asset split and the custody and how we wanted to move forward as co-parents and people in each other's lives because it was amicable and friendly because we both still love each other, but just not in love with each other. But now she has been actually having an affair with this guy for the years we were either married leading up to her asking for the separation or even just through the separation years. Then all of that is out he fucking window because it's based on a lie. It's based on a lie or amicability. And in the end, she said she didn't have an affair, but she can't prove something she never didn't happen. I said, show me your text messages then if this is so new. She refused. I said, well, there you go. So I don't know. I have the ability to pull the divorce paperwork and make her life hell. I'm angry and hurt enough to do it. I feel betrayed and wounded and lied to and clowned. I want to just move on, but also I really don't like the feeling of her doing this and somehow walking away the winner. I know it makes me petty, but I feel like when they go low, we go even lower, is where my heart is at. So AIO about the whole thing. Is it possible she just woke up one day 3 weeks ago and decided to test out a relationship with Owen? Or is it more likely this was always being tested out throughout the years? Story 2, am I missing a possibly relationship ending red flag? I value honest, candid feedback. I'm 56. My marriage of 30 plus years ended, or so I thought, when we mediated a settlement with a neutral attorney. The decision to separate and divorce was mutual. I tried to part with her on civil terms, and I thought she wanted to do so as well. Unbeknownst to me, she had that settlement overturned and surprised me with divorce papers. She initiated one of the ugliest divorces I've ever seen, and being retired military, I've seen a lot of them. After almost a year, we finally managed to forge a new agreement that is now final. The last several years of our lives were, for me, like living in a freezer. She pulled a lot of dirty tricks, and I later learned she had been planning this for at least 2 years. To say I was blindsided is a vast understatement. I thought we had just grown apart after the kids left the nest and started their own adult lives. It turns out that she secretly hated me and tried to do as much damage as possible. She was nearly cited for perjury for making false accusations that, thank God, I was able to disprove with solid evidence. I don't want to make this backstory piece too long, but I think it is necessary. This way, you know where my current concerns come from. I have no contact with her now that all the terms of the divorce agreement are completed. I still cannot reconcile the things my ex was able to get away with during the divorce. She violated court orders, refused to comply with requests until after we filed a contempt motion. And even with my attorney filing complaints one after another, it was like she was untouchable. The reason we caught her with a potential perjury charge that she talked her way out of was because of indisputable evidence that she had lied repeatedly under oath in different venues and continued to do so even when confronted with evidence that she was lying. On the other hand, I was late making a credit card payment because my bank account was hacked and I was threatened with 3 days in jail. She almost was able to have me arrested for removing personal property from the marital residence, property that an order recognized was mine and gave me permission to remove from the house. This was after I found a small collection of coins I inherited had been sold to a pawn shop. I was able to recover them. She was on camera selling them in direct violation of 2 court orders and a motion for separation of property. No, nothing happened to her. I apologize for the length of this post, but you need the backstory to understand my concerns. Uh, I'm financially stable, gainfully employed, and I have a very low debt profile. Although my ex ransacked our shared savings, I got away with sufficient assets to allow for a modest retirement right now, if I so chose. I work because I like it, and I need to be doing something constructive. I'm saving most of what I earn, and I keep my financials a closely guarded secret, other than to tell prospective relationships that I'm financially stable but not rich, and I'm not looking for anybody to support me. I'm too old and too done with dealing with youngers to be anybody's step parent or mom's boyfriend, boy man, boyfriend. And adult kids on their own are okay. I've done my duty as husband and father. And after the shenanigans of the divorce, I am done being someone's provider and protector, only to be stabbed in the back repeatedly with everything from daggers to knitting needles to chainsaws. Done. I plan to retire at or about age 65, about 9 years or so, if I make it that long. As you can see, all I really know about romantic relationships is locked up in my 24-year-old self when my ex and I became exclusive. To be clear, I'm a one-woman man and never, and I mean never, ever fooled around on my ex-wife. After the divorce, I spent a few months licking my wounds, lamenting about how stupid I had been, and thanking God for a good friend who helped me keep most of my things out of the garbage or a pawn shop. A few months after the real divorce became final, about a year separated from my ex, I went on a few dates, basically because I was lonely. I dated people who were plus 5 years of my age. I'm not into dating people much younger than me. These dates did not turn out well. Some of them would probably make good scripts for comedy/horror stories. I'll save those for another time. Several months after my last disastrous date with a woman a year older than me who was a functioning alcoholic, we dated once. She told me it was not going anywhere. I thanked her for the date and then endured several weeks of drunken midnight phone calls about how I supposedly broke her heart. No, we never slept together. I, I met a woman online, the last place looked, who was very different from my ex. She is within a year of my age. She had a similar history in terms of divorced from her second husband about 20 years ago. Her first was a college flash in the pan that lasted less than 2 years. I really liked her, and I wondered if this was a bad sign given my recent history. And we talked for over a month before we met for a formal date. We met, and our chemistry was as real in person as it was over the phone. She has no kids due to a medical issue from her 20s, but she has a large, loving family who adopted me with open arms. If you count time talking, we've been together about a year. Here is the problem. I will never give the state that much control over my life again. By never, I mean never, ever. I live in a no common law marriage state. So I am willing to hold her hand up and declare her as my wife before God and the church. I will never be legally married again. She knows this. And every time she brings up marriage, directly or indirectly, I am very clear that getting married in the state is a non negotiable deal breaker. When people ask me why and they say how great we are together, or they suggest I am predicting problems that won't happen, I tell them that if the second half of my marriage had been even a quarter as good as the first half, I'd still be married. I'm open to all manner of contracts and such for sharing property, identifying her as next of kin or my emergency contact, and even wearing rings and identifying each other as spouses. There are several groups in the USA who do this very thing for that very reason of keeping the state out of their business. We don't even need each other's benefits from being married, such as insurance. As a matter of fact, if we marry, our Social Security income may be affected when we retire. And there are several other marriage penalty issues dealing with finances and estate planning that will arise. She's talking about it more and more. I not only made myself clear from the very beginning, but I have also never wavered in my stance on the issue. Never, ever. Just a few days ago, the wife of a close friend of mine asked if I had changed my mind on marriage, and I said what I have said from the very beginning. I am totally committed to her, but will never give the state that much control over my life again. Never, ever. It was clear she had been recruited by my lady partner to bring this up. Here are the answers to the common arguments I hear. Marriage does not guarantee fidelity. If she thinks I'll step out on her, then getting married in the state is a really bad idea. It also raises a whole different set of issues that need to be addressed. It's good now, but what happens when it isn't good any longer? I don't think I can survive that divorce business again. I sure as heck can't afford it. Anyone who tells you that you need to be married by the state to be in the good graces of God is painfully ignorant of history, scripture, and the vast differences between religious denominations. This point has caused several arguments with otherwise good people who, after running into the evidence, basically dig in their heels and scream, "You're wrong." This is a very detailed discussion, so I won't make it here. Bottom line, screw the state. I declare and affirm and do so swear that she is my wife and I am her husband in sole union before God Almighty and whatever, with community. The state should love it. They get more individual taxes that way, at least before I give up the ghost. I spent almost 2 decades trying to make other people happy and give them what they expect. It cost me almost 60% of everything I've worked for, my share of equity in a house we owned while married, and thousands of dollars unrecovered in costs for selling the marital residence. No, I am well aware that she has more assets than me. She makes 20% more money than I do, and she does not need me. I do not know why someone thinks financial compatibility is a good argument for marriage in this state. I neither want nor need anything from her other than her continued love, affection, companionship, and wisdom. I return all of these to her threefold. And there are other arguments. After only a year, roughly, I really think I am falling in love with her. This is the only sticky point in our relationship. She wants to be married in the state, and I do not. Even if I were so inclined, and I am not, I would not consider it until at least 3 years together. I get it, at our age, 3 years is a long time. Still, even if we had 30 years, I will not marry in the state again. And this issue comes up with increasing frequency. I am genuinely concerned that this will come to a head sooner rather than later. Am I leading her on by being in a relationship with her and swearing my love and loyalty only to her while refusing to surrender to the state? I am a one woman man. If I could stay loyal to a dead bedroom ice demon for 3 decades, staying loyal to my lovely lady will be easy. This is causing a serious crisis for me. If I agree to marry in the state for her sake, I'll resent her. That is one benefit of being older, wisdom and self acknowledged. If I do not, I am afraid we'll break up, or worse yet, stay together with a permanent wedge between us. Either way, I don't see it ending well unless a miracle happens. This is new territory for me. Please give me any advice, questions, or commentary you have. Feel free to be blunt or direct. I just ask that you do so in a civil manner. Thank you. Story 3, should I get this divorce? I left my husband back in March. He and I separated due to his meth addiction and physical, mental, and emotional abuse. He wasn't always this way. In fact, for the first 3 years, he was absolutely solid, an amazing man who was kind, caring, empathetic, and gentle. After our first baby was born, though, I fell into postpartum depression, anxiety, and psychosis. I asked for something to numb the pain, and him being a prior addict knew how to accomplish that. So he brought home meth. We quickly became addicted, and the man I once adored became someone I hated and feared. 2 years later, and we were still using, stopping on and off for a while before beginning to use daily. Our marriage was broken, as was my spirit and will to live. He had turned into a monster. On a cold day in March, we got into a huge argument that resulted in another bout of physical abuse. It was then I decided to pack up what I could, pregnant, called my parents, loaded the babies into my parents' vehicle, and got the hell out of there. Um, I've been with my family sober ever since. My children are healthy, happy, and safe. I filed for divorce not long after leaving my spouse and am now awaiting finalization next month. I have sole conservatorship of our 3 children. I feel this is the only way to protect us. My husband finally got sober a month ago. He and his family want me to put off this divorce, as I have said that I would consider reconciliation with him, but only with true, consistent, lasting change, and it would have to be after ending our marriage. I would like to think that the man I knew before the drugs was real, but I'm not so sure. I am being pulled in every which direction as I try to navigate this whole ordeal. Going back and forth on my decision to divorce him and to not divorce him. I would love to one day work things out with him, but I feel that going through with this is necessary for our well being. And if he truly wants his family back one day, he will do whatever it takes. What should I do? Story 4, AIO being nervous to let my partner, 51, M, know that I want to go on holiday with my family and on a hen weekend with my friends. My 32F partner, 51M, usually reacts quite negatively towards me saying, I want to spend a night away from our place that we've shared for 15 months now for any reason. Just before we moved in together, he literally cried when I said I wanted to visit my family and spend the whole weekend, maybe once every 3 weeks. So the last couple of months, he has been signed off work sick and since lost his job, but now he seems to be doing better. And in the last week has started driving again. He is going to a football match with his ex-partner 43F tomorrow, which I feel was the main motivator for deciding he was well enough for driving. He has also spent several nights away from our place to look after their formerly shared pets when she has gone on holiday. And, but during the time when he waits first signed off, I said, I wish to spend my first night away because I wanted to drive my grandma to my granddad's resting place. He said, don't your family know how sick I am? And what other nights away do you have planned? Then my family wanted to take a coach trip to visit my brother, 3.5 hours trip from home. And he seemed okay about this at first. However, he grumbled a bit when I said I would spend the night at my mom's before the coach as it left so early. but understood. But when the time got closer, he realized I had booked the day off work after. And when he asked, I said that I wanted to sleep at my mom's before driving back to our place. An extra 2 hours. He got crossed, saying first he thought it was just a day trip, then one night away, and now two. So in the end, I drove back the same night as the trip, even though I was so tired. Now, one of my aunts has pulled out of a family holiday of a week. My grandma has asked me if I can confirm if I would like to go, and I really would love to. We are renting two cottages next door to each other with my other aunt and cousins in one, and me and my grandma in the other. Aside from getting a holiday, 51 Mayor has said we won't be going on one as he has to live on very little now that he is not working. Even though football season ticket is costing him PS 700 more than any holiday we went on last year. It would be really nice to sort of live with my grandma for a week while she's still very luckily relatively fit and able to do things. In addition, one of my best friends from school has a hen do coming up. Very cheap and cheerful, 90s themed long weekend with a load of our other friends and her friends from around, etc., renting out apartments at a holiday park. It's only a week after I would return from the family holiday, though, so I am very worried to let him know I want to do both. As an aside, it's not like he seems to be all that bothered about having me here. When I am here, I was worried to let him know I was working in London all day, one day this week, but in the end, he barely blinked about that. Um, then didn't stop scrolling Facebook when I got back and was trying to talk about my day, nor let me cuddle him because he was feeling claustrophobic. When I asked, did he not miss me at all? He told me he's not 5. This despite kicking off for me having to drive him to his parents when I wanted to spend a night away 2 months ago because he insisted he couldn't be left alone. Also, he can easily go a week or more without intimacy now, and even then, it's with reluctance on my initiation, I think. I would be a bit worried he would be trying to pick up a new woman or looking at loads of porn because he was suddenly in the mood in my absence, but um, TBH, that would maybe just be a good way to end Kit. Update, I did finally let him know I wanted to go away 2 weeks before I was due to. I prefixed by actually letting him know I had been nervous. He was technically fine with it. However, did ask me if family and friends hen was really what I was going for, which I later asked about, and he expanded as far as, I just want to make sure you're not lying to me.